I'm Josh Schneiderweiler, coming up on Football Today.
Jose Luis Morales' late goal enough as Levante lifts themselves past Real Madrid.
Magnificent game of football. Real Madrid decorated this footballing pitch with their class, but no finishing touch.
Since the departure of Cristiano Ronaldo in the summer of 2018, Real Madrid has struggled to score goals. So much so that in their last 5 La Liga games, the club has scored 1 goal or fewer in 3 of them. As they prepare for Sunday's showdown with Barcelona, we break down their offensive woes and ask, how do you replace a modern superstar? I'm joined by Euan McTear, a sub-editor at Marca and a co-host of the La Liga Lowdown podcast. Euan, since Ronaldo's transfer to Juventus 2 seasons ago, how successful has Real Madrid been at scoring goals?
Yeah, not as successful, and that's something you would expect when you lose a guy who scored 50 goals per season. 450 goals he got for Real Madrid over 9 years. Quite a nice, easy equation to do there to work out how effective he was. And you lose a guy like that, and it's just not going to be the same, is it? And we've seen it with Real Madrid. They're just not scoring as many goals as they used to. Different kind of type of attack, and it's been frustrating. I think, they had the worst season basically of the century in the first year after Ronaldo left in 2018-19. That's not a coincidence.
Yeah, so just if we could put that in perspective in terms of goals, how big a drop-off has that been?
Yeah, so Real Madrid, if you look just at the league stats that they had, they went from 94 goals in Ronaldo's last year and then just 63 the year after Ronaldo left in 2018-19. So obviously you see a massive drop-off there, but a third fewer goals in La Liga.
I mean, you look at Real Madrid, the goal difference, they scored 31 less goals.
And then looking at this season, 2019-20, if you keep up the current pace of 1.84 this year, that means they're probably going to score 70 by the end of the season, still way behind the 94 goals that they got in 2018-19.
Yeah, I mean, just to put that in perspective, that's less than 5 Italian teams, 3 German teams, and 3 English teams, which is unprecedented territory for Real. So after Ronaldo left, what did they try to do to replace those goals, those 26 league goals that he scored in his final season?
Yeah, so I think the idea was that Benzema and Bale could score more goals, basically, because there was always this assumption at Real Madrid, wasn't there, that Karim Benzema and Gareth Bale had to sacrifice themselves a little bit for Ronaldo to score as many goals as he did. So the idea was that Bale and Benzema had the potential to score more goals and that they could up their tallies, and that didn't quite happen. We'll get into why in a little bit. The other way they tried to replace Ronaldo was by signing Mariano Diaz from Lyon. He'd been at Real Madrid, had gone to Liga and had done really well, 21 goals in 48 games for Lyon. Not quite Ronaldo numbers, but they clearly thought he could help contribute when Ronaldo went. And he came back, and I think it was quite symbolic that he was given the number 7 shirt.
Vuelvo a casa y le vemos con la camiseta del 7 con el presidente del Real Madrid, día especial.
Nobody is going to replace Ronaldo in that way, that he scored so many goals. He was such an icon, but I think it said something that they gave him the same shirt number. They were at least, in theory, thinking he could help carry the load. That didn't quite work out either with Mariano.
You said that they had high expectations for him. Why hasn't it worked out?
It's a strange one because he's hardly been given opportunities. He's had a lot of injuries as well, which doesn't really help his cause. But he came in. Obviously, there was a coaching change as well. It wasn't just Ronaldo who left. It was Zinedine Zidane who left. Julian Lopetegui came in. Very different kind of football. It's not so much about getting the ball in the box and having somebody there who can finish. It's very much about the number 9 being someone who can contribute to the build-up play as well. Mariano isn't that guy. Benzema is that guy, but Mariano was supposed to be the one who would basically take Ronaldo's place in the team. That didn't quite work out. And the injuries, the lack of scoring that he had, meant that he basically got phased out of the team and has never really been able to come back in, even under Santiago Solari or Zinedine Zidane since he returned to the club.
So after that first season when they only scored 63 goals, they clearly realized that Mariano and Bale and Benzema weren't making up for that drop-off. And so in the summer, they signed Eden Hazard and Luka Jovic.
Right, we've got some massive breaking news. You can see it there on the bottom of your screen because Real Madrid have agreed a deal in principle worth £88 million. That's to sign Eden Hazard from Chelsea. That's according...
I think Real Madrid should buy a striker. I thought they should buy it last year. I think they should continue to do so. The Lewandowski ship has sailed, but Luka Jovic can carry this load. Any coach that has come into contact with this guy will tell you, stone cold killer in the box.
How have those signings worked out?
Badly, to be honest. If you look at the goals they've scored, 3 total goals this season between them. And at the same time, you have to remember both these players haven't actually played that much. Jovic, he came in to be the backup striker to Benzema. So he's hardly had minutes either. But when he has, he's come on. Only a couple of goals for him, 1 goal for Hazard, who's been out so much injured. And it's an interesting one because the idea was Benzema would be phased out the team a little bit. Jovic would come in. That was one of the big things they talked about when they talked about signing Jovic in the summer, was he wanted to go to a place where he would get game time. That hasn't really happened. Even when he has been on the pitch, he's been so unlucky. I keep saying that Luka Jovic must be the unluckiest guy at Real Madrid this season because he scored about 4 or 5 offside goals. He's hit the post about 3 or 4 times as well. It just wasn't quite going in for him. And I do have faith that he's not just completely forgotten how to score after doing so well at Frankfurt last season, but it just quite hasn't worked out for him. And then, the Hazard case is a little bit different. So many injuries. Started the season injured, had a 3-month period out between November and February, and then he's out injured once again.
Let's go back to Luka Jovic for a second. He cost £54 million and was coming off a season at Eintracht Frankfurt when he scored 17 goals.
He strikes with full force.
Jovic, and he's taken it!
And he scores, and scores, and scores.
Stunning goal, Luka Jovic!
Luka Jovic, Serbian powerhouse, Frankfurt goal machine, and already one of the Bundesliga's best.
You mentioned he's played quite well when he's been on the field. Why has he only made 4 starts this season?
I'll give you a simple answer, and that's that Karim Benzema is Real Madrid's best player right now this season. So the guy he's competing with for minutes is Karim Benzema, and he's the most undroppable guy, I think, in the team. And that's basically why Jovic has had to make do with very few minutes when Benzema is getting the rest, when Benzema can't play, and when Benzema is coming off early and Jovic comes on as a substitute. So it's been very, very rare that Zidane has decided to go for the 2 of them. And when he has, that hasn't quite worked out. So I think the system at Real Madrid is going to still be with just one natural centre-forward up top. And if you have to pick, you're going to pick Benzema.
Let's dig a little bit deeper with Eden Hazard. Can you document his struggles this season? We're talking about one of the best players in the world.
It all started off well. He had a great presentation. Everybody was there. Everybody was happy. He was smiling in his press conference. He'd made it. And then it kind of started to spiral. Pre-season, he got criticised so much for coming back from a summer holiday overweight, a good maybe 5 kilograms overweight.
I think it was more down to physical reasons. We came too heavy at what you read in the papers.
Yes.
And, it is, if you want to make a horse lose a race, you put 2 kilos on a horse of 500 kilos is enough.
And he's admitted that he was overweight. He said, when I'm on holiday, I'm on holiday. And he enjoyed himself that summer. And he wasn't very effective in pre-season. It took him about 4 or 5 games to even score his first non-competitive goal. Then the season started. He was injured just days before the start of the season opener against Celta Vigo. He missed that game. He also missed the next 2 games. Finally came in against Levante in the 4th week of the season as a substitute. Didn't score there. It took him until his 4th appearance for him to get his first goal, which at this point is his one and only goal with Real Madrid. He scored it against Granada in a 4-2 win. And then this thing is key as well. After he scored that goal against Granada, after he maybe finally could start to build some momentum, the next week, the next game was against Real Mallorca after the international break there in October, and he became a father again, and he missed that trip to Mallorca because he was obviously with his family, and nobody had a problem with that, but Real Madrid lost that game 1-0, and that maybe was an opportunity for Hazard to go there. They had a depleted squad for that game. Many other players were injured, many other players couldn't make that trip, and If Hazard had been able to go there, had been able to get another goal, had been able to prevent another defeat, maybe that could have built up a bit of momentum, you know. But yeah, it was a shame that the week after he scored that first goal, he had to miss that next game, and then he came back, didn't score again, and then suffered that injury in a Champions League game in November. Just came back in February against Celta Vigo, played quite well and won a penalty, but then suffered another injury the week after against Levante, and it looks like he'll miss most of the rest of the season.
So if we zoom out a little bit, does this poor attacking by Madrid standards, at least, reflect more poorly on recruitment or coaching? On the one hand, they still have Benzema, Isco, Asensio, Vinicius, Rodrygo, Jovic, James Rodriguez, Toni Kroos, Luka Modric, and others. And yet, on the other hand, they've spent hundreds of millions on attacking players. And as we mentioned, about 90 million on Luka Jovic, Mariano, and Brahim Diaz, who haven't panned out either.
With this, it's hard to know just yet if these players are going to work out. We have the transfer fee there included for Luka Jovic, but we don't know yet if he's going to work out or not. With Mariano, yeah, okay, that one we can probably say didn't work out, but again, it was a more economical deal because they had a buyback clause. Brahim Diaz, again, it was an opportunity in the market. So the recruitment overall, I think, has been good. You look at all the midfield players you mentioned there, some of the defenders that they've been able to bring in recently. Recruitment overall is good. And here's the key point, I think. Recruitment overall is young. Real Madrid have dramatically changed their recruitment strategy in recent years to go and sign young players. They've signed Vinicius when he was 18 years old. They've signed Rodrygo when he was 18 years old. They've signed Renier as well from Brazil as well, 18 years old. So a lot of these players they've signed with potential for the future. And we can't know quite yet if these players will be able to develop into the superstar players Real Madrid hope they can be. It's very much a different strategy from, well, earlier on in Florentino Perez's presidency when they would go out and sign Galactico players. They've signed one in Eden Hazard, but that's basically just one Galactico in the last, 5 years. Everyone else they've brought in has been medium-range players or very young players who have the potential to become the superstars of tomorrow.
So what you're saying is that we actually should expect this. This is not out of the ordinary.
I don't think it's out of the ordinary, but it's certainly a change, isn't it, from what Real Madrid used to do. Real Madrid, I think, have realised that you can't now go and sign Cristiano Ronaldo when he's at his peak, when he's at Manchester United, because the fee they paid for him then is still disputed, but around 100 million euros. Nowadays, Ronaldo, 2009, Ronaldo at Manchester United, how much would he cost? About 300 million euros. You can't afford that even if you're Real Madrid. So there's clearly a need to go out and sign the players before they become the superstars. And that's why you get some players that you sign and they might not work out. You look at the Brazilian trio they brought in. One of these guys might not work out at all. But if two of them do, then that's economical in the age of modern football that we're in 2020.
So obviously this has been an issue for more than a season. Are there any solutions that Zidane can make tactically to improve their attack?
Well, one of them, I guess, could be to play more than just one centre-forward. At the moment, it's one natural centre-forward. That's always going to be Benzema instead of Luka Jovic. But maybe Zidane could try harder to develop a system where you have Benzema and Luka Jovic both up top at the same time. He hasn't really tried that this season. It's been very rare for them to be on the pitch at the same time. He's basically swapped between two tactical systems, a 4-3-3 with Benzema in the middle and two wide players, maybe Gareth Bale, Vinicius, Rodrygo, Lucas Vazquez, maybe Isco even up joining Benzema in attack, or a 4-5-1 where he just floods the midfield with five midfielders. And that can work to an extent because a lot of these midfielders have goals in them. Defenders, these guys have goals in them. You look at Real Madrid this season, 19 different goal scorers they have. So they've certainly got goals in all positions. The problem is that after Benzema, nobody else has more than 7 goals. So lots of players scoring but not scoring many goals. And yeah, maybe they could put another striker up there and try and have someone else whose main job is to put the ball in the back of the net. Right now, you look at every Real Madrid team sheet, apart from Karim Benzema, nobody else's primary goal is to score goals.
We know that Zidane has pretty much exclusively used that 4-3-3 formation since he originally came to Madrid in 2016. Has he been stubborn in sticking to that formation?
I'm not sure if it's stubborn because he has shown a willingness to try new things. He has opted for that 4-5-1. He's even had slight variations of the 4-3-3 where he'll maybe put Isco in a sort of deeper position and have Benzema up top slightly with Hazard out to one side. He's certainly had variations of the tactical system, and he's not maybe been stubborn in the sense of always playing a rigid 4-3-3. It's very fluid. It changes week to week. But yeah, that 4-3-3 system has certainly stuck, and you're right, it comes from that era of the BBC, but back then you had peak Bale, you had Cristiano Ronaldo, and you had Benzema. You had three guys there who were out with the mission of scoring goals. Now you look at the players who are in that front three, and they're not goal scorers. You have Benzema, and then the other two guys are not necessarily goal scorers. It's Bale, who's a shadow of what he used to be, and then you've got Vinicius, who can create so much, but he's not a goal scorer, and then Rodrygo, who's so young that it's difficult to know what to make of him. So yeah, it's a similar system, but with different personnel in there, and it goes back to how do you replace a player like Cristiano Ronaldo? How do you even replace Gareth Bale from 5 years ago when you've got Gareth Bale from 2020? And you can keep the same system, but if the personnel that you're putting into that system aren't goal scorers, well, then you're not going to score as many goals.
Have there been any unintended consequences of Ronaldo's departure?
I suppose one of them would be the improvement in defence. So we've spoken about how Real Madrid's attacking numbers have gone down, but you look at their defensive numbers and they're all improved. You look at this year in La Liga, after 25 games, 17 goals, conceded 0.68 goals per game. Real Madrid have never had a record as good as that at this stage in the season. So the defence has certainly improved. And we spoke a little bit about recruitment, but you look at the back, they brought in Thibaut Courtois. He's starting to work out. They brought in Ferland Mendy.
Ferland Mendy's number one for Real Madrid. He's got too much pace, too much agility. He's ousted Marcelo now to the bench. Got a better side with him in.
Even Eder Militao, the third choice centre-back right now, when he's played, he's looked really sharp. He's looked really good. So the defence has certainly improved since Ronaldo left. And maybe that's partly because now when Real Madrid don't have the ball, you have 11 players who are thinking about defending. When Ronaldo was playing, logically, he's not going to contribute to defence. He's too important, too efficient in attack to have to even worry about defence, maybe apart from in some big Champions League games. So when Real Madrid didn't have the ball with Ronaldo during that era, you had 10 guys defending. Now you have 11, and that's been a positive unintended consequence of Ronaldo moving on.
Fortunately for Real, we know that they have a huge checkbook. How can they solve this issue going forward?
So yeah, I think the answer to that is Kylian Mbappe. He's been the guy they've wanted for some time. Even before he moved to Paris Saint-Germain, he was linked with Real Madrid that summer.
Many are suggesting that Kylian Mbappe then could move from Monaco to Real Madrid. According to the front page of Marca, the Spanish newspaper, I only want to play in Madrid, says Mbappe. Apparently he's told Monaco he wants to leave. He was hesitant at the fact that if he went to Real Madrid, he wouldn't necessarily play. However, if Ronaldo's going out the door, then that...
They really wanted to sign him straight from Monaco. They couldn't in the end, but that hasn't changed their mind. They love Kylian Mbappe. They would love to sign him. Zidane is a big admirer. Mbappe has always admired Real Madrid. I think he'll play there one day, and maybe that partly explains why they haven't gone out to sign another already established number 9. They've gone and got Luka Jovic, but maybe this is why they haven't gone out to try and bring in somebody like Lewandowski or to try and bring in somebody who's already established at that position, because they probably know in their recruitment strategy that maybe they're going to sign Kylian Mbappe within the next 1, 2 or 3 years. And that maybe just means you have to have a few seasons where you have to make do without a 30, 40, 50 goal a season striker, because you just lost one and maybe there's another one coming.
We know that El Clasico is coming up in a couple days. Could this be a preview of Barcelona's issues when they eventually lose Messi, assuming that he is human and eventually retires?
Yeah, that's quite an assumption to make. Who knows how long he'll go on for? I'm sure he could keep doing it until he's 50 or 60. But yeah, I mean, Barcelona are going to have to lose their generational talent as well at some point. And when you answer this question, in a way you can already look at what happened when they lost Neymar. And although they still had Messi, to try and replace Neymar was a difficult problem for them, and they've spectacularly failed at it. They've spent more money than they received for Neymar on Philippe Coutinho and Ousmane Dembele, and that hasn't worked out at all. Injury issues have played a part for sure, but I guess in the case of Coutinho, it wasn't anything to do with injuries. He just wasn't a fit. He just wasn't as good as maybe the price tag. So they've already experienced what it's like to try to replace a player who's irreplaceable, and they found that it's quite hard, obviously, to replace a player who's irreplaceable.
Just for some context, the last season they had Neymar, they scored 116 goals in La Liga, and last season they scored 90 goals, so about a 26-goal drop-off. So, given all we've talked about, what does this tell us about replacing superstar players in 2020?
I think it says that it's very difficult, and much more difficult than it used to be. It's interesting because we've never quite had players like Messi and Ronaldo, so we've never really seen how a team can try and replace these guys. But even in the past, you saw Real Madrid and Barcelona, they've all had superstar players, they've all moved on at some point, and they've all had to try and replace them. But back in those days, you could replace them because they were affordable. If there was a really top player in the Premier League who you really wanted to sign, you could afford them if you were Real Madrid or Barcelona. If there was a talent in the Bundesliga, you could afford them. If there was somebody coming up at Atletico Madrid or whatever, you could pick them off and bring them to your team. In 2020, you just cannot do that because the transfer market inflation is so high that when a player is established, when you know for certain that a player is going to be a world-class player for the next decade, it's unaffordable even for teams as financially powerful as Barcelona and Real Madrid. So I think it tells us a couple of things. Number one, that it's very difficult. And number two, that maybe you do have to go for Real Madrid's strategy of trying to sign these players when they're young. We still don't know if that strategy will work out. And maybe what you have to do is try to complement them with the occasional superstar signing, the occasional big splash, and then you sign some young players. You know, what Real Madrid have done. Maybe you splash out every now and then on an Eden Hazard or a Kylian Mbappe, and then you supplement that with young players who you're hoping can be good. It's like you maybe spend your Friday night, you go out and you eat caviar, and then the rest of the week you're having beans on toast, and maybe that altogether comes to an aggregate pretty comfortable week for you.
You can follow Euan McTear's coverage of Real Madrid and La Liga in Marca and on the La Liga Lowdown podcast. Also, before you go, I'd like to make a special recommendation to go check out the Total Soccer Show podcast. They cover a little bit of everything in football, but with a little extra humor. So if you like humor and football, you'll probably enjoy their podcast. And they have shows daily, so there's always something to listen to. So go check out the Total Soccer Show podcast. This episode was produced by John McKenzie. I'm Josh Schneider-Weiler, and thanks for listening.